Good afternoon, everyone. Treasure Troller here. Welcome to another edition of Small Town Murders, not the podcast. Today we are back in White Cloud, Michigan. We are at the Big Prairie Township Cemetery, to be exact. We'll be going into town shortly. I know we sometimes end the vlogs at the gravesite, but today it just seemed more fitting to really start the vlog at the gravesite because for one individual, this was a very tragic ending to the story. And for another individual, well, it started a personal hell that lasted for years. So we are at the grave of Kristy Ringler. Her life tragically ended on August 26th of 1979. It was a case that for the individual lasted for years, and let's just go into town and let's begin the story. Well, first I want to clarify something. I made a mistake on the date. It was actually August 25th, not August 26th. Now, Kristy was, at the time of her death, she was 19 years old. She is a graduate of White Cloud High School. And you can see the sign here for the bar. But Kristy was a waitress, bartender at this establishment during that time. So what is fairly, I guess, local talk or whatever, that there seemed to be, or there were occasional after parties after the bar closed. So on that night, there was a group of people here. One gentleman's name was Larry Souter. And at 2 o'clock when the bar closed, they both attended an after party, which was approximately 1,000 feet away, less than a quarter mile away from the bar. And I really don't want to go there because I'm not sure, but if you can see that brown building there in the center, there's a couple of mobile homes over in that area. I'm reasonably certain that is the area of where the parties took place, but it's been many years, it's hard to tell. So anyways, they're at this party, and about 3 o'clock in the morning, Kristy decides to leave. Now, there was some documentation that there was, as the paper put, an amorous relationship, or maybe an amorous evening between Larry and Kristy, or that it got amorous. That's the extent of how they listed it as. But anyways, Kristy just suddenly decided that she was going to leave, and Larry had walked with her for a little bit and tried to convince her to let him drive her home. But Kristy decided she was going to walk. And as you can see, the cars up here, which is M37, just a few hundred feet from the party and the bar, Kristy was found in the middle of the road She was face up, arms to her side, facing perpendicular to the traffic with her head basically on the center line. Although she was still alive, Kristy later died that early morning from the injuries. And this is where Larry's story starts really going south. So the heat begins to get turned up on Larry. It's, I guess, not for good reason. He was the last person to see her alive. He had some sort of amorous encounter with Kristy, and he was one of the first people on scene. The accident, or scene of the crime. Just a few feet away from where he was. So there wasn't, I guess you could say, there wasn't any reason why that they wouldn't have suspected him. One of the first officers on scene was a gentleman by the name of Roger Altena. I'm not sure if he was a undersheriff or just a deputy sheriff, but later on that day they found a broken whiskey bottle near the scene, and it had trace amounts of Larry's blood on it. Of course, Larry had also told them, now Larry has been completely helpful with these guys from the beginning, and he had said that he had cut his hand at this after party on a broken door latch, which a couple people actually said that, yeah, that happened, and he had asked for a band-aid or something to stop the bleeding. And then, of course, there was the autopsy results. Now, the first autopsy came back inconclusive, and the second autopsy from a forensic pathologist out of Lansing really leaned towards that this was a traffic accident. Now, at this point, you can't really blame investigators for having a little bit of trepidation in concluding that, because, well, when Kristy was found, her clothes were still intact. Nothing was really disheveled on her. There were some eyewitness reports that there was very little blood. And of course, there was really no scene of a hit and run. There was no broken glass or anything like that. So that's the way the case stood. No charges were brought in 79. They once again had brought the case to the prosecuting attorney around 1983, and the prosecuting attorney said, no way. And then something happened. That undersheriff or deputy sheriff, Mr. Altena, had become sheriff around 87, 88, something like that. In one of his pledges to the constituents of White Cloud was that he was going to bring a closure to some of these cold cases or open cases. So once again, after many years, Larry's back under the microscope. And in 1982, Larry was tried and convicted, found guilty of second-degree murder, and received a sentence of 20 to 60 years in jail. Now, of course, Larry has always pleaded his innocence. His first appeal was denied. Larry appealed on the claim of due process, that he really hadn't received it. They didn't have any new evidence. They had the same evidence from 79 as they did in 92. Well, actually, they had maybe a little bit less evidence because the sharpened whiskey, broken whiskey bottle had somehow became dull in the evidence locker. And some pictures of the scene were missing. And Larry had always contended that there was a lot more blood than what people had actually were saying there was. But there was no evidence presented that showed any amount of blood or whatever at the accident scene. So then Larry appealed once again in 2005. And this time he had a couple things going for him. One is he had a really, really good attorney, John Semenka. I can't pronounce his last name. It's something like Seimtanka, out of Grand Rapids. Very, very good attorney. And they were appealing on three things. First was some of the expert witness in the 92 trial had said, well, we weren't saying that it was definitely a whiskey bottle. And they had some further witnesses from the whiskey company saying that there's no way that this bottle could be sharpened or a sharp edge, or there's no way that this bottle could do this type of damage. The third one was I don't know. But the fourth bit of evidence came about unsuspectingly, and that was a 4-page affidavit by a lady by the name of Carla Demkoff, who in her deposition had said that her father, who owned a mobile home, or motorhome I should say, was in the White Cloud area, who had actually later turned out was at the lamplight that night, and came home, and the next day was repairing the side view mirror on his motorhome, and he was from out of state, and he planned on staying a week, and he left the very next day. And when he took the damaged material, or the old side view mirror stuff, rather than just throwing it away, he put it in the back of his motorhome and took off. So that testimony, finally, after like 13 years in jail, finally got Larry Souter released from prison. Now, I know what you're thinking. I know Lamont's viewers are way too smart. I know you're thinking she finally comes forward because, see, her father by 2005, he had passed away a few years back. So I know what you guys are thinking. This was the guilt finally got to her, the remorse, it was time now to finally let go of the long-held family secret. I know you're all thinking that, but you're completely wrong. That could not be further from the truth. Actually, what had happened was, after this accident, this lady had seen the story, because she lived in White Cloud at the time. She had seen the story of Kristy. She wrote a note to the sheriff's department, or the White Cloud police, that she wanted to talk about the Kristy Ringler death. And so they took her statement about her father wanting to just get out of town in a hurry. He had no answers for what happened to his mirror or how it got broke, only that he was in the area, he needed to change his mirror, and he wanted to get the heck out. So the police took her statement. They also, according to some newspaper clippings, actually called her father and conducted a phone interview. And they decided that, well, no. The story just wasn't believable. And actually they had found, and I'm just that I'm thinking, they found in the appeal, they also found pictures of the bloodstained clothes, which was rather significant. But actually, no, you're wrong. The police just never turned over the evidence of the pictures, and they never turned over the evidence of the statement from Carla or anything from the father's telephone interview. It just, that just all got forgotten until Mr. Seneca, or whatever, they filed a Freedom of Information Act and got the not only her statement, but they got proof that the note actually was actually part of the, I guess you could say part of the evidence, but just not given to Mr. Souter's defense team during discovery. So, that is the case of Kristy Ringler and the case, or the life and health story of Mr. Souter. I don't mean to make light if I've given that impression that, Kristy, unfortunately, her life ended that August 25th. Way too short and tragic, and I just kind of feel like there's two victims in this story, and I guess maybe a third as well with Kristy's family, who had wanted justice for her for a long time. Had probably thought for a very long time that Larry was responsible for her death. And in '92, they finally thought they had gotten justice for their daughter. But that just didn't happen here. I guess hopefully the random simulator that runs all of our lives has made this turn out all right. So with that, this is Treasure Troller saying aloha and good day.